Hi, Leonardo Cala. This is your class observation feedback video, and I will start by mentioning the focus area that you chose in stage 1, and also to mention the focus area that our mentor teacher identified as a need in stage 1, right? So the two focus areas chosen by you in stage 1 were teaching methodology and formative and summative assessment. And the focus area chosen by our mentor teacher was objectives and didactic sequence. Based on these three focus areas, I will start giving you the feedback of the class observation I participated some days ago, right? So let's start first with the first focus area, that was teaching methodology. Based on this, that day in the class I observed, you started the class with a small warming up activity, which was a song about the parts of the house. Something I observed was that the students were following the song and identifying the parts of the song and the parts of the vocabulary you included in that activity. Also, something very meaningful for the students was the use of the printed flashcards for reinforcing the vocabulary related to the house. Students participated a lot and they followed the drilling activities about pronunciation. I like this first part of the class because I observed that you took the time to plan it. You gave me the printed version of the lesson plan that was so good, and you were the only teacher that did it, and I appreciate it a lot. And I liked it this beginning of the class. So based on this, something I liked about your class was that you gave me the lesson plan as I mentioned in the printed version, and I identified that you had a learning objective in the lesson plan. It would have been good to write your learning objective on the board, just to foster students' metacognition about what they will learn during the session. I know that they were first graders or second graders, if I'm not sure, but it would have been good if you would have written the learning objective in the board, then to explain to students what they will learn today, maybe ask them to write the date and the learning objective in their notebooks, and in that way we foster metacognition and we empower students and the way they are learning. Now I will give you some recommendations about what I've mentioned, and I will start giving these recommendations with some driving questions. The first question would be, have you thought of involving more of your students in the learning goals achievement? It would be good that at the beginning of the class, as I told you, you could write the learning objective on the board and ask students to read it loud. Maybe it can help them to drill and to pronounce correctly this learning objective, making them to reflect on what they will learn during the session. Then you could ask them to write the date and the learning objective in their notebooks, and after that you can start the activities you brought to them or for them in the class. Now let's focus our attention on the second focus area, that was formative and summative assessment. And regarding this, I like the way you monitor the input given to your students. You first presented the vocabulary and drilled about the pronunciation. Then you use some flashcards and ask them to repeat. And after that, you ask them one by one to pronounce the vocabulary of the house. I liked it because you were very focused on allowing students to participate, to pronounce, to identify maybe the pictures of the flashcards and to match them with the correct pronunciation of the vocabulary of the house. So I liked it the way you did this monitoring activity regarding the formative assessment. I also like the way you use some digital mediation sources to make students sing songs related to the vocabulary, and while they were singing, you were monitoring their pronunciation. You use all the time English as a means for communication and for giving instructions. That is something very meaningful for the students because they were exposed to the second language all the time, even though they were first or second graders. Based on this and regarding assessment, have you considered including gamification strategies to monitor the students' performances related to the learning goals of the class? One way of doing this might be to design a spelling game in which students have to organize the word order of the vocabulary. Also, you could create teams, give them the letters of the vocabulary, and they have to organize the words you can give them. And I think in this way, students can work on the word order of the vocabulary given in the class. I think that if you include gamification within your lesson plans, students can get more benefits in their learning processes. Now, let's focus our attention on the focus area chosen by our mentor teacher, that was objectives and didactic sequence. Based on this, your class had a very clear learning objective, which was to learn the parts of the house. The didactic sequence you planned was correlated to the activities you designed. All the activities were interconnected and with transitions among them. But regarding this, I think that the question you used in the class to foster students' interactions and to foster students' participation was, what is this, right? But I think that you might also include a model or a prompt for students to be able to answer, and not just to say the word or the isolated word. For example, if you ask the question, what is this, one model or one prompt that you would have designed for this question would be, this is a, or this is an. And in that way, you help the students to create simple sentences and not only to say isolated words. The activity was very good, and you were monitoring and you were following the sequence of the class, but I think that it would have been better if you, to the question, what is this, you would have created a model or a prompt, this is a, or this is an, and then ask students to participate by speaking in all the activities you design and you applied in the class. Now, some recommendations based on this. Have you considered designing and printing some worksheets to foster writing skills for your students? I recommend you to include in your lesson plans activities that help students to develop all 4 skills. During the observation class, I realized that you foster listening, reading, and in some way speaking, but the writing skill was missing. One strategy that you could use can be by designing a paragraph model with some empty spaces in which students have to work in. For example, they were talking about and learning the parts of the house by singing, by identifying the pictures and the vocabulary, by pronouncing them. So it would have been good that you design like a worksheet that or a filling in the blanks activity in which, for example, they can choose that vocabulary that they learned into this writing and guided writing activity. For example, I live in a blah blah blah, and maybe you can show them the 2 options, a house or a flat, and then it has 1, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms, etc. So you can monitor and model and the students, they got to speak, and then at the same time they got to write in a worksheet that you already designed. It would have been good that you would have included maybe a small activity to foster the writing part, because I think you didn't include that part in the lesson of that day. Based on this and based on the data and the feedback I've given to you, I would recommend an action plan for next year, and would be to focus your attention on two focus areas. The first one would be students' interactions, and the second one would be the use of materials. Regarding the students' interactions, I recommend for next year that you foster more students' interactions by making them speak and write in L2, and not just to repeat by heart vocabulary or words. And regarding the use of materials, I suggest you to design worksheets that help students to develop their writing skills. I think that in the class I observed, as I told you, writing was missing. And then maybe you can include these focus areas in the first term of the next year. Thank you, Leonardo, so much for allowing me to be in your class. I was so happy being there. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. Thank you so much.